This is One Up Yours podcast for July the 7th, 2006 on the One Up Radio Network. How's everybody doing? We've got a pretty hot show lined up for you today. We've got, of course, in the front section, we're going to do the What You've Been Playing segment like we always do. We've got a lot of feedback on this week's question of the week. You guys had some crazy stories and then some normal stories. Hit the pile of shame topic for a minute, and then we'll get out for a quick second and come back in the second break. Today's roundtable is going to be about we're going to get into the Lester Bangs, Clive Thompson articles about, gaming journalism. The second part of that is we're going to get into a little talk we were having today at lunch about, do you guys really want to see the seedy underbelly of dealing with PR and all the other crap we put up with to bring you the stories. And then after that, of course, we'll have Luke's news, and we'll all get into arguments about all that crap, and it'll degenerate into the question of the week before we get to the end of the show, right? Something like that.
We actually decided where we wanted to take the question of the week this week, right?
I know. We're like planned.
We had a meeting.
This is how organized we are now. We have meetings about the show.
So we'll go around and let you guys introduce yourselves.
Hi, this is John.
This is Luke.
This is special guest Shane Bettenhausen, Electronic Gaming Monthly.
Special guest.
You're
on.
the Anne from Melrose Place, Locklear. Thanks for showing up. Glad we could pry you away.
I get special billing.
I'm glad.
It's in my contract.
I'm glad Jennifer said you could be with us today.
That's nice. You have to ask your mom first.
Easy. She might not like being called a mom just yet. Not to someone Shane's age.
Shane's wearing a very nice new Radiohead T-shirt today.
I am.
You went to the gig?
Both.
Oh.
God,
that's
fanboy.
Cool.
Yeah.
Are they sponsored by Sony?
No.
That's how you swing it when you're an executive editor.
Yeah, and?
Yeah.
Jesus. Do you have a pin drop?
Oh. So what you playing, Garnett?
Oh, you starting out with me? I played a lot.
You're playing some boring PC game that no one cares about.
Man, we talked about this. See, this is exactly what I was talking about. You see, I don't
or wait, maybe you're playing
stuff.
Prey. Oh, wait, or is that what I just said?
It's very clever of you.
I know.
Very clever of you, except I was playing Prey.
Prey's out next week, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Prey is out next week. I've been playing it on 360. I finished it up on July the 4th, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And I'm ready to put the big review up tomorrow.
You quite like it,
Well,
right?
today,
I do quite like
right?
it.
I played the demo. Did you play the demo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you like it?
No. Not a fan.
Right.
I felt like I said it at lunch today. I felt like
People weren't with us at lunch. You realize?
Yeah,
this. We talk
I know.
about what we do at lunch a lot. I
just want them to know that it's sort of like I've already prepared it.
You're contextualizing your opinion.
I've prepared it for them. I just felt like when you were playing Prey, it was like you were like inside the head of a 14-year-old fat kid in a Cannibal Corpse t-shirt who's like really into Cronenberg movies. Because everywhere you go, it's like an asshole spitting an enemy at you.
We should add that's very familiar for someone who grew up as a 14-year-old fat kid who liked Cronenberg movies.
I didn't, though.
And he's an asshole that spits things at you.
I do like Cronenberg
He
movies.
definitely sprays a lot.
Yeah. Jesus Christ.
Well, it's funny. I had asked Garnett what he was playing, and you kind of jumped in here with your opinion, and that's cool because I want to say my opinion. And my thing about Prey is it's such a PC game, and that's not a problem for a PC game. But on Xbox 360, it's just like it felt like they did nothing to make this like console friendly, and it felt like a PC game from 10 years ago. Like,
how can you say that they did nothing to make it feel console friendly? It plays perfectly comfortably with the controls. It's balanced where you have good dead spot on the stick.
It just has like
move.
But it has like a bad frame rate compared to the PC version. Like it just seems like
how does it have a bad frame rate
port.
compared to the PC version? How much of the PC version have you played?
I saw it at E3, and I know
I saw it at
I know
E3.
it wasn't slopping down to like 20 frames a second.
Where does it slop down to 20 frames a second?
When you're
in the demo, actually, in the first time when you go to the Cherokee tribe cave. Go
ahead, sing it for us.
Sing it. If you look up at the, I'm trying to keep us moving forward here. You're fucking trying to take us down the path of the dark side. If you look up though in the room, the frame rate dips tremendously with all the shit on the walls and all the Indian art or Native American art or whatever it is when you're in the secret dead space.
But I'm saying it just doesn't feel modern, especially like modern console FPSs have a lot of wide open environments and like more innovative level design. And this is so claustrophobic. You're in these tiny little passageways.
I can't believe you just said that it doesn't have innovative level design.
It has portals.
Okay, so how many games?
It has gimmicky level design. And like when I've talked to people who played the whole game, I haven't, but they say that they start abandoning those portals throughout the last half of the game and just like straight up. That's what I hear.
Defend your shit, Garnet. Defend that hive.
Defend it.
Exactly how many games have had gravity that they could put on any wall and move you anywhere that they wanted to anytime? How many games? It's such a gimmick. How many games have done that? How many games have had?
You're looking at me like I'm about to help you.
I haven't. FPSs aren't my genre of choice.
Oh, I don't like FPSs, but I can tell you.
Doesn't like PC games. Doesn't like FPS games.
bad
You know, when
form,
you have a free demo, then you're open to criticism from everybody because everybody can play it. That's what I'm saying.
So basically, you're full of shit, and even though you don't like this, even though you don't like this kind of stuff, you're the authority to tell me
and
why
what
it
I find
sucks.
interesting is I was reading a lot of message board response on multiple message boards, and when the demo came out for 360 last Friday, a lot of people were like, one sale, you lost a sale on the demo. Instead of like a demo supposed
There
to
were
like,
some really interesting responses to the 2 demos that hit.
well, yeah, the PC one.
The PC guys loved the It was
Right.
basically the same thing, and the PC
same
community
Loved it.
thought it was great, and it had some nostalgic qualities to it. And a lot of people were saying this is like, this kind of reminds me of the game design from 10 years ago. And then what the PC community was saying was good was exactly what the 360 community hated about it.
It made me nostalgic for Quake 4 because it's the same like opening of the game. Like there's a scene that's just like Quake 4 in there.
To be fair, it's better than Quake 4.
It's considerably better than Quake 4. For one thing, you talked about the frame rate. Yes. So I'll give you this. So there's several half steps that keep it from being like the ultimate game. But, that's like the frame rate. So the frame rate drops in a few spots, but you can get into plenty of firefights. You get in the places where it stalls, or it doesn't even stall. It drops to maybe somewhere a little bit under 25, but not as low as 20, right?
Were you counting?
You counting the frame?
Dude, I played a lot of games. I can pretty much easily tell. I can look
He's
at the
like,
game.
yep, that's 22.5.
I play games long enough. I can probably come. I bet you I could come within 2 frames a second.
Oh my
What
God!
was-
It's like name that tune. Like
I can name that frame rate.
Name that stupid human
you were
trick.
stumbling towards a point there. What was it?
I think he just tripped.
My point was that in Quake 4, when you got into areas like the tank, the first time you get in the tanks and you're like driving outside, the frame rate goes down very, very low. There is not a single place in Prey that has that problem. They've taken the Doom 3 engine, they've done more with it, they've made it look better, they have better models in it, and they don't have any of the frame rate trouble that Quake 4 had.
Well, I want to talk about the Doom 3 engine really quick because the Doom 3 engine always gets used the same way.
It does.
So
It's always like this
Slimy,
biomedical,
gooey things?
slimy tech hybrid. Like you look at
It
the
makes
enemies.
a good rusty pipe.
Yeah, you look at the enemies in Prey, and it's like one of the enemies is this 2-legged thing with a head and teeth and no arms, and it's just
Looks like one of those, those little
It's such-
clockwork dick things.
It's
that
such an
jump-
unin-
that
I think I
jump
saw-
around. It
I think
looks
I
like
saw
one
that
of
someone's
those.
Trapper Keeper the other day.
Yeah, it's such an
sketched in the
it's just
margin.
such an uninspired enemy design, and I feel like the Doom 3 engine is a good and powerful and slick engine, but it always gets used for the same sort of like
But you know what?
retread
I think we're all
shit.
being a little mean to Prey. I think we are actually because there's like not much coming out this summer, and it's a 360 game.
Right.
Right.
I see what you did there.
Well, but we're all kind of treating it like it's a monumental FPS, and really, it's one of those games that people
Hey,
might like.
Luke, it's always good, by the way, if you apply a little KY first instead of late. Or maybe we should tell Shane you're supposed to do that first before.
Okay, so but in that context, so it's a sci-fi shooter on Xbox 360. There's Quake, we've already dismissed. Other FPSs, let's forget about Call of Duty. How does it compare to Perfect Dark?
Well, that was pretty much an easy one because I wanted to come back to your level design thing. You were all down on the antiquated level design. The level design in the game is great.
claustrophobic but gimmicky.
No, it's not claustrophobic. You see, you've only played through the first 20% of the game. Throughout the game, and especially like in the last 3/4 of the game, you play an entire section of the game that's wide open inside the space where you're playing it like Descent. Do you ever play Descent?
I
You know
did
what I'm
play
talking about?
Descent.
Okay, so Descent, you're going through different tunnels, but it has chambers that you go into that are wide. It has that whole sort of, you get like this personal transport device, which is like you stick your hand out and this magic suit comes around you or whatever. I don't know. They don't ever really explain that. But basically, you can fly in 3D space. You've got like guns that you can fire, and you've got tractor beam. It opens up what you wanted, this wide open 3D space. In comparison to Perfect Dark, look, Perfect Dark had to throw blue arrows on the ground to guide me through the levels. The level design was so bad. That's absurd. That was ridiculous that they had to do that. And the graphics were, what were they? They were pretty. They did some nice lighting tricks, but there wasn't anywhere near the level of detail or depth that they have in these.
So how's the multiplayer?
But I wouldn't call Prey's graphics impressive.
Really?
Really.
See,
I
I
think
would
it looks
disagree
like
with you.
marginally better than Doom 3 on Xbox.
Marginally better than Doom 3 on
And
Xbox.
comparable to Perfect Dark Zero.
I just think it's important to keep in mind too that we're still really early just in terms of like the grander scheme for the scope of next gen and the grander scheme for the scope of the Xbox 360, that we're still very early in the games that are being developed and that are coming out, and that we need to keep in mind that there's like what we think now is setting some sort of bar relative to where we're going to be in 2 years. It's not going to mean anything.
The thing is, when we've played Gears of War, then you see Prey, you're like, well, this, this
Right.
doesn't measure up.
I mean, Prey on HD looks pretty good.
I think it looks great. I played the entire game through on HD, which I thought was really important to the experience of it. If you're playing it on SD, I guess I should boot it up on an SD so I can look at it and see what it looks like. On HD, it looks really, really solid. You can tell it was also designed for widescreen. Mm-hmm. The point of view definitely works in the widescreen, so I'm thinking if you put it on a 4x3 TV, it's not going to look as it's not going to feel as right, the looking through it. You ask about multiplayer. The multiplayer that I played, which admittedly has not been over live, we did it over System Link on 360, and we did it over PC, has been fantastic. I like it. It's more cat and mouse. I guess the comparison is Doom 3, and the Doom 3 multiplayer was pretty much ass. I mean, that was like the big knock against it when it came out, was how boring the multiplayer was. This is really cool. You go through a door, you're chasing someone, you have no idea where they went because there's so many options when they go into a larger room of where they could have gone. They could have wall walked, they could have gone through a portal, they could have turned a corner and been waiting for you to snipe you. So I think the pace of it, if you're looking for like a Quake 3 pace, you're not going to have that. It's more... I think people on 360 will really like the multiplayer. I think you'll see a lot of people playing it.
Some imaginative modes.
No.
I hear that the weapons...
They definitely dropped that.
The weapons don't have a very satisfying feel of hitting another player in multiplayer, and it's hard to tell if you're hitting people. Someone told me that.
Yeah, it's probably a little hard to tell. I think the weapons...
I think it's the nature of the weapons, perhaps. Like, give slime guns and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's like a goo gun, isn't it? Or a spud gun.
So it's really bizarre. I mean, I thought I wasn't going to like the whole organic weapons, and I wound up liking them a lot more than I thought I would, because throughout the game, you're going to accumulate this arsenal of 7 weapons or 9 weapons. And usually, in these games, you're working your way through the hierarchy, like Half-Life especially. As you get the next gun, you're like, okay, well, screw it. I don't use that gun unless I run out of ammo. Okay, screw it. I don't use that gun unless I run out of ammo. This game, each gun has different uses that make sense for the gun. So you find yourself in a different battle reaching for a different weapon, hotkeying him to your D-pad so you can say, oh, okay, well, this guy I need the acid gun, or this guy I need the rocket launcher and kind of thing, or the grenade launcher.
Maybe don't get it out with FPSs on consoles. It seems like because of Halo, it's such a good game. When there's a really good game, everything else just falls by the wayside. And this is just another thing that you'll play until something better comes along. But in 6 months' time, will anybody be playing this game? In 3 months' time, will anybody be playing this game? I think that's what people are bringing to this Prey. They're like, oh, it's just like a stopgap.
It's just the last thing to play before you get Genji.
That was cold.
Ouch.
That was cold.
No, but I think to that point, I think Gears of War.
No resistance.
Gears of War will kill Prey.
Yeah.
Gears of War will kill Prey. Gears of War will kill Prey. Prey is a great game. You're going to have a blast with it over summer. It's by far the most enjoyable shooter I played on the 360. It'd be perfect. Dark's not a comparison.
This is officially the longest individual. What have you been playing?
Well, we finally have
ever.
Something exciting to talk about that's actually happening.
We
in the
have
world
more
of
games that are just out to talk about.
Other games?
Yeah, I've been playing the Lord of the Rings. Whatever.
Oh
it's
yeah,
called
what do you think of?
I saw you on that last night.
Oh yeah, I played last night. I started through the Evil campaign.
It's a game of the month in the new issue of EGM.
Is it?
It is.
Really? How were you on it?
No.
So I
obviously not. It's a 360 game.
Oh, that's true.
What? I have reviewed 360 games.
So it's very
With
interesting
PC
because
roots.
they're clearly trying to do for RTS games what Halo did for shooters in trying to remap a very traditional PC control system to a controller.
Ambitious.
And they've been, I would say, moderately successful. I think that they're definitely heading in the right direction. But I found myself doing something last night that I don't remember doing in a long time, in that I had to look at the controller while I was playing, and I don't remember doing that for such a long time.
Is there an overlay you could place on your controller?
Because what it does, I mean, it's like a lot of RTS games, but it probably has as much in common with something like Age of Empires as it does with Dynasty Tactics. It's very combat and sort of grabbing things and sort of mashing them together into little skirmish kind of things. But what you end up doing is using a combination of triggers and the 2 sticks and the D-pad to control things, which I was very mindful that I was having to learn the controls, which doesn't happen very often. But once you do learn it, it is very quick and snappy.
Was there any point where you didn't want a mouse?
Oh God! There were times when I was fighting the urge to reach for something else, But there's this sort of you're using triggers, and you have to hold the trigger to do something, and then you cycle through some menu options with the D-pad, and so you're moving your hands around on the pad in a way that you don't normally in a game.
It's a lot of fingering.
There's a lot of yes.
Jesus.
But I think it's got some imaginative stuff in it. And I think as proving that you can do a fairly complex RTS game on console.
Did you do the tutorial?
No, I just jumped straight in.
So I took home the other copy, and that might have helped some because the tutorial is very careful about walking you through it, and it kind of gets you the feel of, okay, here's how we're using the right trigger. And so if you think about using the right trigger this way, this is what it does. And there's some commonality to how it works throughout the different menus.
What a lot of games do is they try and take an existing metaphor and remap it, and what this has done is it's not trying to replicate a mouse and keyboard combination. It's completely, so you can't say, oh, pulling the right trigger is a bit like left clicking. It's not. It's something else.
It's completely different.
It's because what it does, instead of in a lot of RTS where you control individual units, what this does is you generate little squads of things at once. Yeah. So there'll be 9 goblins will come out, and then you highlight them you control them as a unit, and then you can group units together and send them off. And it's got like a lot of this kind of thing on.
Is it accessible to the average person?
I think if there are Lord of the Rings fans that aren't necessarily gamers, I think it might scare them off a bit. It's not.
But if you're not an RTS fan already, will this make you one?
No. I totally don't think. And so I'm not even convinced that I'm still not convinced that RTS works on TVs, because even on a widescreen format, the scale just doesn't work out right. I mean, so we've been playing Rise of Legends a month ago, which is one of the best real-time strategy games I played in ever, because I was bored with the genre and I liked this so much I started getting back into it. And there you can grab the units with your mouse, and the units are the right size, and so you can just at higher resolution, you have the right number of units on the screen. Even on a big HD screen, Lord of the Rings, it feels like Dynasty Warriors. It doesn't feel like a real-time strategy game.
What I found is that in the 360 version, you didn't have enough options with the camera. You can zoom in and out and you can rotate, but I find that sometimes you want to tilt as well, and you can't do that because there's times where the view is obstructed a little bit, or you're not really sure, or you're a bit screwed up on your orientation. And some of the way they've mapped some of the keys, that there are things that you would want to do with a joypad. Like there's a button that will always snap you back to your home base, but there's no button that will send you back to where you were previously. So very often you're in a skirmish and you realize that your guys are getting their asses handed to them. And like, oh God, I need to go home. I need to generate a bunch of goblins and get them over here quick. Yeah. And you can go home, but then you have to trawl all the way back over with the camera. And you're looking at the little map, and the map doesn't rotate with the screen, so you have to look at where your field of view thing is. There's a lot of stuff that... it
would work well with RTSs, the Wii with the nunchuck. I think it'd be...
Yes, and I think definitely this sort of the gesture-based thing, I think there's a lot of potential there. But
and it'll look like an Atari game.
But as a test bed for a sort of a new type of RTS that maybe takes some actions for you so that you're not in complete control of everything, I'd be interested to see what this same group could do with a franchise like Command & Conquer or something that's a bit more sci-fi rather than fantasy-based.
What I was about to say isn't this sort of EA's beta test? As far as testing out a control scheme, see if it's going to work, see if RTS coming into consoles is viable for as a platform for Command & Conquer.
The first. How did Herzog's Vi work? I mean, that was the first one, but there haven't been that many since on console.
I don't think that this sells me on RTS. What this sells me on is the idea that you could make a really cool hybrid sort of game that had more RTS sort of leanings in it, and do it on console and make a cool an action adventure role playing, all that kind of stuff mashed up into a game. But as far as a by the book strategy sort of game like a Command & Conquer, I think if you do Command & Conquer like this, you're just going to do two things. You're going to piss off the Command & Conquer fans, and you're going to have the console people wondering what the hell was so great about Command & Conquer.
I've been playing a ton of turn-based stuff lately. I'm playing Age of Empires and Advance Wars on DS, and it was quite jarring playing this kind of game and it being the real-time stuff, because you were like, I don't have time to get all the way back over there. There's a fight going on while I'm deciding what to do.
I mean, maybe it gets better later on, but it didn't seem so tactical to me. It really just seemed like a big mashup. It seemed you created, just mash the shit together and let them fight.
It is all about the rush. I mean, the way the original Command & Conquer was, it's like you spend resources on getting as many of the most powerful thing you can, and you just bundle in there and watch them beat the crap out of something. And then you sort of amass resources and do it again.
And the good RTS games on PC left that behind years ago.
Right.
Well, I will say it was Game of the Month, but it didn't win an award. It was a bad month for games.
Really?
Yeah. So there you go.
Didn't?
That's tough.
How about you? What have you been playing?
God, embarrassingly, World of Warcraft.
Really?
I've been playing a lot of Halo Combat Evolved actually at my desk. Garnet came over today, and I was like, what the hell are you doing? And I'm like, dude, Truth and Reconciliation Legendary, perfect clear.
So hard to predict.
First Cavern. Yeah, isn't it? I mean, put out something I want to play.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah, I've been playing a lot of Winning 11, actually, both for the tournament and then with Skip, like recreationally.
And given when this podcast is coming out, we can crown him head Colombian.
Champion.
Yes. I'm not going to gloat too much. I've already rubbed John's nose in it enough. And,
Dick.
and Damian and I, we both live in the same condo, and I've, made fun of him a lot.
Have there been any rematches?
No, we've been actually playing. We've been playing hockey, like hockey on the 360. He really likes hockey.
Wow.
It's similar.
So yeah, well, that's the thing. Like I talked about, like as far as like for sports games, for 2-player sports games, I think that hockey and soccer are probably my 2 favorite. Or even like the Virtua Tennis is great too, because there's a lot of strategy. And there's like with hockey and soccer specifically, there's not a lot of scoring opportunities. So when you have them, it becomes these really intense moments, like a penalty kick early on in the game.
Don't remind me.
Wow.
Goal.
We went down like the real England squad. I thought it was funny. I noticed this week that as a nation, our faith in our World Cup team is so diminished that we start another major sporting tournament, Wimbledon, in the middle of the World Cup because we can assume as a group that we're not going to go through the final, so we can just move on to like watching our like tennis stars lose now.
England has tennis stars?
I don't know. I assume we have people that play tennis.
Wow.
We have a deal with ESPN, right?
Yeah.
Shane, what you been playing?
Well, for this month in reviews, PSP is back and better than ever. I'm stunned. Like, I've always talked about I never
By a
played.
Sony product, really?
Oh yeah, I always talk about how not fun PSP is and how I turn it on. It's always dead because I haven't played it. But this month I'm on like Tekken for PSP, which blew me away. It has the best loading times of any PSP game I've ever seen. Like it's unbelievable.
So
like,
you only have time to go out and get, a couple of beers out of the fridge and some Triscuits.
like the initial load is short, and then before a match, it's only like 3 seconds, and it's not even a loading screen. It shows you like your 2 characters and your stats, and like before you know, you're playing, and it looks good. And because of this, every other PSP game I've ever reviewed loses like 2 points because they all have terrible loading times. I don't know what Namco did to figure it out, but there you go. And we got Ghosts and Goblins. For review, and that's cool.
God, I can't wait.
So yeah, all of a sudden it's like, wow, this black thing I can play games on.
And it's really is that super hard? I mean, I don't know how much
it's kind of wussed out actually because you continue right from where you died. Like when you die, you start right there.
Yeah.
Whereas in Ghouls and Ghosts,
that's kind of against the Ghost and Goblins
I know.
thing. That's bizarre.
As someone who's beaten them all like the real way, I'm a little too easy. But yeah, that's what I'm playing. So
I'm jealous.
PSP's
actually.
back, baby. Watch out.
When's Ghosts and Goblins come out?
Late August.
You know what I know he hasn't been playing?
Well, yeah.
That'd be Psychonauts. I know he hasn't been playing
That's
Psychonauts.
a good transition. Where was that last
But I
week?
like that game. It's really creative and fun and great. Love it.
Yeah, sure you do.
Classic.
You know what? I don't love it so much anymore.
'Cause you're a hater, dude.
And you know what? I hate
Maybe if
to
it
be
had
a
more
hater.
like American Indians in it, you'd like it.
Welcome to the club.
They prefer Native Americans.
Whatever.
That's right. Maybe if it was a corridor shooter, I'd like it.
There's kind of wall walking in it.
Not enough buttholes pooping on them, I guess. It's like,
there needs to be a sphincter on every corner.
Oh, back to that game. So the American Indian chick who works at the bar, why does she look like a dark elf? Like, have they ever seen an American Indian? That's my question.
She totally looks like Liv Tyler, does it? It's pretty funny.
As an elf.
As an elf, right? Liv Tyler, yeah, that character.
the
So
only
does
Liv
she
Tyler a lot
factor
of
in
people
later
know.
on?
Does she what?
Does she factor into the game? Because like Grandad bites the dust pretty early, right? I mean,
Yes,
like he
she
does in the demo, he gets skewered by that not overly elaborate,
The part
gigantic
that's-
machine.
The part that's just like the part
The
in
big
Quake,
fucking
in Quake
machine.
4 where the straw
Spoiler.
cast
Yeah.
units exactly like that.
It's
That
this
part.
huge metal thing with giant spikes, which presumably is a giant metal spiking machine. It doesn't appear to serve any other purpose
for killing
for tenderizing people.
So, folks, if you're wondering why I don't feel like I have to argue with them, I ultimately get to voice the one-up review, which, I have my points, and they can sit here and flail away as much as they like. And,
Buyer beware.
yeah, that's about the end
7.
of that. Depends on what you like. I really liked it.
Anyway, back to
Psychonauts.
Something you really don't like.
Psychonauts seems like it expended all of its wit and intelligence in like creating the characters and in the environments, and then when it got to the game, it was like, oh well, so we could do this. Oh, I know what we'll do. We'll do emotional baggage. That's pretty cute. And then it's like just
It's
another,
optional.
Yeah,
It's a very. It's a.
There
it's
are a
quite
lot of doodads to pick up. It's true.
It's quite a conventional game in
terms of
sort
mechanics?
yeah.
right. And so the juxtaposition of being so conventional next to so much cool creative stuff makes the conventional part really stand out as like just plain old ordinary stuff.
In terms of getting this game initially greenlit through Microsoft and like being put into production, like for like, okay, we have this totally batshit game that's totally nuts, and the gameplay is like nothing you've ever seen. It's inexplicable. Want to give us a lot of money? No. I mean, I think the fact that it is conventional, it is a platform, it's something that people would buy, people would like. I think that's part of why it came into being.
Exactly what we talked about the other day. The reason Microsoft pulled the plug on this historically is so easy to see. It's because, hey, remember Blinks? Remember Blinks 2? Remember Voodoo Vince? They're looking at this game and they're saying, you know what? We've seen this game 3 times and it didn't work. The reason Microsoft pulled the plug
on this, they pulled the plug on all of Ed Free's projects when he left. Like, because the whole strategy he created was failing, and this and Stranger and lots of other games got killed.
Yeah, but you know what?
Stranger,
it came out.
Stranger was a great game,
but it was, you know, this Stranger, Torque, like a lot of games got killed at the same time when Ed Freeze left.
Right,
that's what happened.
Stranger was a much better complete package, I think, than this. This has much more imagination, and I don't know. I'm going to keep going on it.
You're talking about Oddworld Stranger,
right?
I thought you were talking about
something else.
I was so confused.
Sorry.
So for people who are following along, I made it up to the Lungfish boss, and this boss is like just absurd how ridiculous it is. I was telling Skip about the process. It's like a 3-step process to kill this boss, and it's like you're like, is this going to end soon? Because it's really stupid. How far did you get? John, you played some, right?
I played some, and I was playing it a bunch, and I left it on and just never returned to it, which kind of tells me that it just didn't bite me. Which I'd put it aside when it came out because everyone was raving about it, and it's like this, you know, overlooked classic, and it's a disservice to the industry that this game got overlooked. And then I started playing it, expecting to be sucked into it the way I had with some of Tim's early work, like Grim Fandango, and I mean, I remember playing Day of the Tentacle, stuff like that, and it just didn't do it because it was this sort of clever veneer sitting on top of something very conventional. And I think once you get through that it's witty, and I think what it does do is it proves that games can be funny, and there are so few games that actually try and be funny. There are games that are accidentally amusing because of something stupid, but this is something where they sat down and intended it to be
to hear a line
witty,
that's actually funny.
A line that's actually funny, and the delivery is funny, and the characters are well thought out, and I think all of that stuff is very commendable.
The characters are brilliant.
But what it's sitting on top of lets it down.
Exactly. Totally. That's the end of that discussion, really. So
I'd love to see more funny games, because the games that have marketed themselves as being humorous lately have been way too extreme. It's Larry and the Guy game, and then there are other things where humor's come into it sort of as a site. Like, I mean, what people forget is the GTA games are actually quite funny, particularly San Andreas.
Yeah, definitely.
Paper Mario is also very funny.
Yeah,
game.
But there's not been any, like, there doesn't seem to be a market for like games that really push comedy and humor.
Writing isn't really valued in games very much.
Yeah.
So,
you know what Psychonauts isn't? Psychonauts isn't a game that you would like break open the piggy bank and go across the country for, like some of these games that we had from our question of the week.
Oh my God! Welcome back, Garnet. After
that was a killer transition.
Did you talk to him? Like last week, it was a series of awkward pauses for transitions. This week, Garnet brings the A game, and you know what? No one's drank.
I want my damn beer back.
Connect the dots.
So one of the most interesting that I read was Solid Snake KA13s. This is like this epic story about what he did to get his Earthbound copy, which is great because so like he rented it for a long time and he really enjoyed playing it, and then he went back afterwards and he wanted to play it, so he did ROMs and emulators. Then he decided he needed to buy it off of eBay. So he buys it. He wins this bid off of eBay by, like bidding high on it. And I love this part. So he borrows his car from, I guess from his girlfriend. Right, from his girlfriend. So he says, after a few hours of talking to her brother, she convinced him to let me borrow his car for a price. He wants $200 so he could drive it to Texas. So he drives to Texas.
Because he doesn't want the dude to ship it because he's afraid it'll get broken. So
exactly. He doesn't want to have it shipped, right? So once he finally gets to Texas, he was a little annoyed, but he gets to the guy's house. So the guy was surprised he drove all the way down there. We talked for hours about random things. We hit it off pretty well. Actually, we hit it off so well, he let me stay at his house before I headed out the next morning.
The question is, in his bed or not? That's my question.
Let's not go there, dude. Anyway, so that was totally crazy.
Lost a reader there.
Yeah. Thanks for posting, Solid Snake.
Yeah, thanks. We really liked you.
Anyway, but he kept it unopened.
Wow.
But grand total, about $600, he said, for that.
For a game he didn't open?
Yeah, he didn't open it.
But he loves it.
He loves it, but yeah.
What game was it again? I sort of faded out.
Earthbound.
Oh, that's why. It was because something I didn't care about.
Anyway,
if we didn't get rid of him, I figured that would help.
Yeah.
Tray Table decided that he really needed, and this one's even more. These guys, it's so funny to hear the stories you get into because you're like really hooked on a game. Tray Table really wanted to play Shenmue 2, so he went through the whole Dreamcast, Xbox evolution, where it was like changing platforms. So it comes down to it. I don't know if you remember this, but a long time ago, well, not a long time ago, a while ago, MSN Network used to do this promotion in Best Buy where they'd give you $200 rebate in the store if you'd sign up for 2 years of MSN service. So he had like $110 to his name. He does the MSN deal for $21.95 a month for MSN service, so that he could get his Xbox with Shenmue 2, right? So you say, no, honestly, that wouldn't have been so bad if I'd lived in new housing development, but I lived in the sticks near a swamp. I like that part. So cable and phone companies didn't care about us. So for 2 years, I had MSN at $21.95. Had to be the worst local ISP I ever had. The highest speed I ever got was 19.4K.
Oh my God.
So he suffered through 2 years of 19.4K at $21.95 a month. So he could get his Xbox and play Shenmue 2.
Wah, wah.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Man, that's okay.
Shroom here had a great story about when he was 15 and on Valentine's Day had to get Metroid Zero Mission. So apparently his dad left the keys in the truck, and they decided, hey, we'll just take the truck and run down to the Target. So he ends up at Target, a little nervous, get the game, start heading out to the parking lot, and my perception at the time was a little not spot on, so I ended up hitting a car on its back. Now I freak out because I have no license and my dad's going to whoop my ass. So I back up right away, crash into a van, jam out of the parking lot, end up on the street, take a fast turn. The truck does a 180 and ends up hitting a tree.
Wow. These stories are awesome.
So,
how does this kid still have fingers to type to tell this? If I did something that stupid, my dad just would have broke.
Metroid Zero Mission is pretty good.
It is pretty good, right? So then I included two more for you guys. This one's for Shane. Vjo 2, his game was Soul Calibur 2. He's in Canada.
I'll kick your ass at it, kid.
So anyway, where did he live? I'm trying to look. I think it was the Bahamas.
Nice.
So anyway, he went through this whole great importing process to get it. Wound up paying $370 for Soul Calibur 2.
How much?
$370.
I would venture to say that's worth it.
I figured you'd approve.
What's the most you ever spent on a game? The most I ever spent was £120.
That's a lot.
Which in today's money is pushing is over $200 for a copy of Street Fighter 2 on Super NES.
Import?
Yeah.
Nice.
Back in England.
That's good.
Yeah.
There was a guy on the forums who lived in New York, and I caught the same bug he did in '98 when the Dreamcast hit Japan. I had to have it, so I think I bought it from a place called Tronix, which I don't know if those guys are still around.
Joe from Tronix, nice guy, not around anymore. Maybe he is.
They were super cool. That's who I was doing import with, and I spent like $900 on an import Dreamcast, Soul Calibur, freaking Dynamite Deca 2.
Wow.
And I got a Tokyo Extreme.
Oh my God, that's so bad.
It was so
this
horrible.
Wasn't at launch. You obviously bought it after launch. I bought my Dreamcast
a little bit after launch. Sega Rally and one other game. What was the other game? Power Stone, which was awesome. And we played the shit out of Power Stone.
Pen Triathlon?
No, I did not get Pen.
Tronix is still around. I'm sure they're great.
Yeah, they were always good guys.
My website's still up. Pen Triathlon, I bought it, and I spent a lot of money on that, and I convinced myself I liked it.
I kind of did the same thing.
I can't imagine you doing that.
And so the last one's for Luke.
convincing himself he likes something.
And Godis points out that I'm surprised no one mentioned MMORPGs because that's really where you spend a lot of money. And he notes that, hey, you know what? Just World of Warcraft, £35 for the first game, and he spent another £105 over the next 15 months keeping up with it. So
yeah,
£140 right there. And
it's a habit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Wow. That's a hell of a lot of bucks. So that's where we went with Question of the Week. You'll have to stick with us till the third segment to get this week's Question of the Week. But coming up next, we're going to be talking about little media coverage and do you actually want to see the underbelly of games journalism? And we'll be back.
You're listening to One Up Yours on the One Up Radio Network.
Hi, this is Jeff Green, the editor-in-chief of Computer Gaming World magazine. With me is Ryan Scott, associate editor of CGW. Say hi, Ryan.
Hi.
Ryan is held at gunpoint right now, and unless you listen to the CGW radio podcast, I'm going to shoot him. So if you want Ryan to live, please listen to the CGW radio podcast at cgwradio.oneup.com or at iTunes. Do it for Ryan. Do it for Ryan's mom.
Want more Extreme Tech? Well, now you can join the crew of expert analysts for a weekly podcast. They'll give you the lowdown on the latest technology news, product reviews, and let you know what's coming up. Just go to extremetech.com to subscribe.
All right, so we're back. And a couple of weeks ago, while I was not here, actually, you guys got into the Lester Bangs article, right?
Yeah, we talked about the thing from Esquire, and tons of people wrote responses to it. But
There was stuff all over the web about that, and we talked about it a lot, and there was a lot of message board stuff. I've read a lot of blogs about it. But Clive Thompson, who writes for Wired, wrote a very good response, which you have there, right?
Yes, I brought it with her.
Do you have any selections you'd like to read from it?
Today's selected readings by Luke Smith.
No, I don't actually. I'll find one. I didn't know that I was going to be leading this part. Go ahead.
Oops. That's cool. I mean, I liked getting into it because I liked what Clive said, because he made a really good response in what he wrote there, which were, at the end of it, he finishes up by pointing out that people like the people on 1UP are the Lester Bangs, because you can't really compare the music industry of 20 or 30 years ago to the video game industry of today any more than you can compare the movie business of today to it's just all different environments, all different media.
Two things have changed. Media's changed, and it's a lot more collaborative now. We do have blogs and message boards and everyone chipping in and sort of voicing things.
These guys who are listening.
Right. The other thing is that video games are very, very different from movies and music and books, and that Lester Bangs could go out and sort of wax lyrical about music because everyone had a point of reference. You could sit down and spend 3 minutes listening to whatever piece of music he was talking about and either choose to agree or disagree with him. You can't do that with video games. You need access to the game. You need to have got to the point that proves the point that you're trying to make. You need to have been able to play it or to have sort of understood how to play it. I mean, there's all this mechanics to get through before you can get to the art. And I think that's something that a lot of people that aren't really engaged in gaming overlook, and that it isn't art. And like they criticize games criticism as being product reviews, and this is something that we talked about a few weeks ago. And for the time being, they really have to be. I think some of the only games right now that you can be a little more sort of arty about are some of the games on DS, which are very, very simple, and you don't have to think about the user interface, and they're completely accessible. But they're different kinds of games. I mean, it's some of the stuff that people would classify as casual.
Electroplankton.
Or non-games.
Or non-games
Right.
that are more sort of electronic toys.
Yeah.
Are the only things that you really can do some of the stuff that Chuck Klosterman had talked about in his column. And I think the other thing that is overlooked is that games aren't really as open and sort of full of potential as everyone that doesn't really play a lot of them would like to believe. You can't choose to not do something in most games. It's a linear path through it. You just have the illusion of freedom.
It is a narrative still.
Right, there's a
definitely
narrative.
still a narrative.
And the cost, the enormous cost of gaming means that the narrative itself is very often the thing that has the least amount of time and money applied to it, because all the money goes into making the graphics engine work and the physics and the sound and everything. That telling the story is secondary to what the frame. I mean, we always end up talking about frame rate, and it's such bullshit, but it is something that people still get hung up on.
We just did.
Yeah, we
25 minutes
just
ago.
did it again, because in Prey, before you get to the significance of whatever his name is being a Native American and what that impact has on the story, if any, which personally I think it's extremely gratuitous that they just decided, because they had this weird mini game that they wanted to put in with a bow and arrow, and it's like, oh hey, let's have him be a Native American so we can like spirit walk or whatever. It just seems so much of an afterthought to appease a gameplay requirement, as opposed to telling a story about a minority and the sort of spirituality of that minority in the context of being abducted by aliens or whatever. Prey does not do that. And I think you can't have that discussion about Prey, because that wasn't the motivation for it. It is a shooter that uses the Doom 3 engine.
By the way, even when he was Talon Brave 10 years ago, he was still a Native American.
Right, but ultimately, what difference does it make? Apart from his grandfather whispering bullshit in his ear that is obvious anyway, like, oh, you have to go here and do this. Really? Because the game won't let me do anything else.
Thanks, Kenobi.
It's the same reason very rarely does someone start talking about a narrative of a game as like a first thing. Like, oh, I was playing this game. The story was like, people don't do that. That's not what it's about usually. I mean, when a game does have a really strong narrative, that it comes out and it's a big deal, but it's very rare.
Of the 500 games that we see every year, how many of them do you ever remember. There was the story in that.
Remember the story? Maybe
Beautiful.
2 or 3. Maybe. You know.
It's definitely a hot topic because when I guested I was on the Evil Avatar podcast last night, which I guess goes up today also, today being Friday. We got into the same subject and we immediately steered down the same course. And I think that we bring a lot of this on ourselves because outside media has been quick to jump on this whole gaming is like movies comparison.
It's not.
And it's not. But I think a lot of gamers saw an opportunity to say, oh, people understand movies, people respect movies. If we associate ourselves with movies, maybe they'll respect us too, as kind of like a quick fix. And now we're kind of going to regret that because it's not the same.
Some of the production values in games have similarities, whether
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
CG or it's, in the old days it was applying movie production to cutscenes, back in the Wing Commander and all those Origin games where they were trying to force movie things so they could say, starring Mark Hamill. He was Luke Skywalker, he's in this game. Ultimately, it's
He's also
insignificant.
that guy in Corvette Summer.
His contribution is
Good
irrelevant
movie.
ultimately because the game has nothing to do with the bits with Mark Hamill in it. But so we still aren't there, and we still don't have that sort of common point of reference. But I think people are starting to demand different things from the coverage, and I think with reviews, for it to be criticism, there are two different audiences really. There's the people that are really into games that crave something, and then there are the people that I think Chuck Klosterman was talking about and Clive Thompson talks about a little bit, and that's something else. People that just want to know about games. And I think the traditional games review, which is ultimately a product guide, we're giving people a buyer's guide as to if this is worth you spending your money on or not. I think it's two different crowds of people.
Well, and we're at this weird crossroads where you talk about DS earlier, and like the DS games that fit outside of this rubric, that might be the future of games. These small
Trauma Center.
yeah, these
something
small
like that.
experiences where it's very strange and interactive, and it's tough to explain a narrative in Nintendogs or Brain Age. And if that's the way the gaming is going, then the paradigms of film and literature they don't apply anymore.
It's more it's toys,
right?
It's,
Do we change the way we write about these games? With Wii and DS, if those things really take off,
the games I'm most excited about coming from Nintendo are things like Elite Beat and these games that aren't these.
They're outside the norm.
Yeah.
I think the thing here is that video games is a very broad term, and within video games, there's lots of different things that people are doing that still can be classified as video games. There's the Nintendogs of the world, and there's the Alan Wakes of the world, and there's the strategy games like Battlefield Middle Earth, and there's the Praise, and all of them do different things. And trying to compare them apple to apple to apple because they're all video games doesn't work.
Alan Wake's going to be interesting because I think there are going to be multiple ways to approach coverage on that game. I think in the context of a video game website or magazine reviewing it, I think there's going to be sort of inevitable comparisons to Silent Hill or however it ends up panning out, whether it's sort of more RPG-like or adventure-like. And that might be good or it might be awful. But then at the same time, there could potentially be a lot of interesting coverage in what they're trying to achieve with it in terms of the imagery and the metaphor that it's doing and the sort of, is it spooky, is it not, is it witty, is it not. I think that game is ambitious in terms of its content. But the sad thing is that the people that might be interested in the artier things that some of that coverage will be about are probably never going to play it. The people that can relate to the movie type aspects of it, when they pick it up and try it, it's potentially too intimidating an experience for them to ever see the art.
Well, when you start talking about arty games or games that are arty for arty's sake, it's difficult because I reviewed Killer 7. That's a game that came out last year, and it's not really a very good game. I ended up giving it a 6.5, which is kind of higher than I really felt because the art was so good and so innovative and unique and visually striking. But the game kind of sucks and the gameplay sucks. And as a reviewer, I was kind of well, this is hard to review because the game isn't very good, but it's really a unique artistic vision, like a singular vision. But it doesn't succeed. So
are you rewarding it for being commendable,
right,
or are you rewarding it for being rewarding?
Exactly, and when it succeeds on narrative and visual levels, but fails on a gameplay level, and that's a rare situation where something is really beautiful and creative and different, but still kind of sucks.
Shadow of the Colossus.
Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I felt about that game.
Yeah.
One thing I want to point out, what Clive does at the end of his article, because this is probably the best part when you're talking about, when he's basically at the end, he paints a picture of what he thinks this sort of these types of writers are going to be. And the picture he paints is, it'll be some crazy, unruly spawn of sports writing, gonzo journalism, analytic philosophy, memoir, and investigative reporting. The Lester Bangs of gaming is going to be a philosopher of play, which I think sums up, it sums up what it should be, but and also within the confines of that, that's still going to be someone who's catering to a very small audience because it is, like you said, just product guides. It's just.
Because they are too
buy,
big
at 7,
and
it's
complex,
a no
and it's not a 2-hour chunk of your life for $10. It's a 10, 20, 30-hour chunk that
or like World of Warcraft. I mean, like think about that.
Hundreds of dollars and hours and hours and hours, and no one's ever really talked about the art or the narrative of World of Warcraft because it's not about that. It's about the collaboration and the community, and it's a different dynamic, which I think you can speak very elegantly about, and there is more than enough stuff out there. The other thing I think is that this stuff needs to work its way out of games coverage as well. I think we can push as hard as we can with 1UP or EGM or any of our products, but this kind of intelligent and knowledgeable acknowledgement of this type of entertainment, it needs to turn up elsewhere. It needs to be in Entertainment Weekly. It needs to be on television. We need to. I don't want to see, all due respect to you, Jeff Keighley, but Gamehead this week, you're doing Video Game Vixens. You have this fantastic outlet. You have a show on Spike at the weekends that guys are going to watch, and instead of doing something worthwhile with it, you're doing Video Game Vixens, which everyone's done. PSM does it every year, for God's sake. It's like you have this avenue and this audience to do something good, and you're not, because video game stuff always falls back into the cliches, and it's not just the enthusiast stuff, which you could say has an excuse because we know exactly who our readers are, but this is something on Spike. It's just guys.
Yeah.
So you can go to guys and you can talk about games in a different way, but no one does.
It's a little discouraging to me. At the same time, I see these subway and bus ads aimed at women selling DS Lite to women, like specifically, and then they're doing Video Game Vixens at the same time. It's like,
right.
well, how have we come anywhere? No, we're still the same place.
But the opportunity is there, and it would appear that increasingly the demand is there, and yet when you see Entertainment Weekly review stuff, or you have like Gamehead on Spike or whatever else, it's it's the same old crap that we get. It's where G4 messed up. G4 was so embarrassed by who it was aiming at that it tried to attract different people, forgetting that ultimately the type of people that want to watch a TV show about video games are people that want to watch a TV show about video games. You don't want to attract MTV people who don't care. There's, a game can sell millions. There isn't a show on Spike right now that has as many viewers as some games have buyers. So the opportunity is there. It's just being wasted. And it's like this, EGM is gonna continue to grow the way it is, but it's always going to be, probably under 1 million readers. And then gaming websites are always going to be, in the realm of what they are. But, predominantly what we find is people come to sites like 1UP and GameSpot and IGN predominantly for buying advice. They don't necessarily want to read about the art of a game because they're not looking for that. They're like, I want a new game for my Xbox. Is Madden any good this year? I was in EB yesterday and I heard some guy arguing with the guy behind the counter about he wanted to pre-order the new Madden. And all he cared about was what was going to be in it and why did he want the special edition with the extra thing in it. And the guy was explaining the extra stuff that they're doing with the Madden special edition now, and he was like,
I don't give a damn.
I don't give a damn. Why? It's $10 more. Why?
How many people want to delve into the art of whatever their chosen entertainment is? How many people really want to delve into the entertainment, into the art of the books that they read? My wife reads books all the time. I don't think that she wants to get into a great book club literary discussion of.
You kind of want to know that it's out there. You want to know that people out there are delving really deep into this stuff. And if you want to get into it, you can. Whereas with gaming, well, does anybody really do that? No. I mean, like, where can we find that? Like,
because American media, as a general rule, like, it's lowest common denominator across the board.
LCD all the way. Which is the same reason that they're doing Game Vixens this weekend.
Well, right.
But a friend of mine presented a research paper at MIT on jumping in Super Mario Brothers. It's like he wrote like a 50-page paper, and it was awesome. And he actually explained gameplay from a really theoretical standpoint. It's really out there stuff. And I was like, well, we need more of this. We need people thinking about games in I was happy to know that it was out there. That my friend did that. That was incredible.
But I think what Clive points out, and I guess I'm almost disappointed that he didn't put it quite this way, is that there's not going to be a Lester Bangs of video games. There's going to be a whoever these people are of video games, because they're not going to do the same thing, because it's not the same thing. I mean, how many songs or albums a week was Lester Bangs listening to? Tens, hundreds. How many movies a week does a movie critic see? They're digesting at least a dozen, maybe 24 movies a week.
The other thing is,
cannot possibly digest that many games a week.
There's a biography of Lester Bangs called Let It Blurt, which talks about his life and about sort of how he engaged in the music community, and he was hanging out with bands, and it was sort of the time, and it was as rock and roll was getting big, and he was able to sort of insert himself into the culture of rock and roll as an observer with them while they were creating. And I'm sorry, but a band sitting in a studio jamming to come up with a song, there is no metaphor in gaming that is that.
Well, but it is interesting. Like
just these guys riffing on paper with some pens and drawing.
It's interesting, but it's not the same.
Right.
But, some journalists out there are having experiences that aren't that different than what Bangs wrote about. And, friends of mine have hung out with developers and have some crazy experiences that if they were to write these up, it would be kind of like what Bangs is doing.
There's that.
But there's kind of understanding that you don't do that because of PR, which is like to segue back into what we're doing. Like, a friend of mine might have gone and done drugs in Spain with some crazy producer, but like he can't write about that because PR would kill him.
And so because of the beast that we've built, the PR holds a lot of strings because we haven't stepped outside of that box and we haven't broken that mold. And so PR has control over this stuff. So that takes it to the point of, hey,
and
how much...
Just to be clear, this isn't just gaming.
Oh, no.
It's all entertainment right now. Is very much...
What you see at night on Entertainment Tonight or Extra or all those shows is the stuff that the PR people are pushing out to them to get on that show.
So the culture of media is all about control of information. And I think there's sort of very disparate goals going on between trying to get information. I mean, like what Luke does every day, and what he ends up pissing people off is that you go out and you find what information is public and has been stated, and you join the dots and you jump to conclusions, and you either can substantiate them or you can't. And that is so sort of antithetical to what PR is trying to do, which is to control the message and try and deny the fact that this information has gotten out there. Yeah. And they want to control it and be on target. And, okay, there's this date, and on this date we're going to announce this piece of information, and then, we're going to make... These people are going to be able to see it, but these people aren't. And then we're going to go and we're going to invite the Maxims and the Spikes of the world to see it at this time. And then the game's going to come out, and hopefully, by that point, enough people have been manipulated or controlled into saying enough positive things that we have a good opening weekend. And that happens in movies, and it happens in music, and it happens with books, and it happens in games.
Yeah. And when I hear PR people say, like, they are told to change 1UP's opinion on something, that happens. Like, you need to change their opinion on that game. Mm-hmm. That happens.
And people lose their job over it.
Yeah, people lose their job all the time over that.
I mean, what I want to talk about just now was just even something that happened today. I asked a company with a very high-profile game. A story was written this week talking about a feature that was in the game that hadn't previously been discussed. And I contacted the PR handlers and said, linked to the story, pasted the quote, said, confirm, deny, is this a real feature in this game? And they responded with, we're not talking about that feature set at this time. That's bullshit. You're going to talk about that feature set right now because other people are.
It's not in the PR plan.
Yeah, the thing is...
not in the PR. That's exactly it. That is exactly
no, but the
it.
PR plan can blow me because you're not going to get to... You cannot control that information. Once it's out of your hands, and it's your obligation at that point to represent that product and say, yes, that's real, or no, it's not, or that's a feature that, we haven't entirely figured out how it's going to work yet. It's buggy still. Or you say off the record, this is what it is, but we're not talking about it yet. And instead you have these lazy sitting in khaki pants and sweatshirts at, some PR company sitting there going, yeah, we're not talking about that right now. Like, kiss my ass.
You must love
another company this week. Another company this week. I was going to go down to their office to play another high-profile game with another editor from the Ziff properties, and that company was like, nah, we don't want that Luke kid here. We don't trust him. Like, you know what? Maybe you shouldn't. Because the way you treat our medium, you're not treating us with any respect. And part of that, part of that is our own problem. Because for so long, there have been journalists who you've seen kowtow to the PR relationships where they're willing to just to figuratively suck dick for an exclusive, and it's bullshit. And there are plenty of fingers that we could point around, and we're not going to, but it's absurd, and it's a huge problem. And that to try and rebel against that and to try and break this mold, and you just are met constantly with suffocation. And I mean, if you wonder why I'm always cranky, it's a huge part of why.
Because the idea of a scoop, the idea of an actual news scoop in the world of media journalism these days almost doesn't exist. I mean, because it's all so controlled, and exclusives are controlled. It's all part of a plan.
Because when invariably the topic of journalism comes up on message boards or in blogs, or, like it was last year when, Ron Gilbert and Dave Jaffe started bitching about gaming media, and it spawns this sort of, there'll be a few months where people are talking about the state of journalism in gaming. And the problem is that when you do try and do it, it's shut down, it's ostracized, it's denied, what we were saying just now, but what you're trying to do with news and trying to piece stories together is real journalism. And the resistance to that kind of thing is so huge in any kind of entertainment media that it's no wonder that people are sort of just kowtow to it, because it's the line of least resistance. And it's not acceptable. It's unethical.
It will make you look bad as a company. It will make you look bad when you treat
every
it.
now, at this time of year it's very quiet, but as we get into the fall, the things to get exclusives. Everyone wants exclusives. It's going to get traffic. It's going to get readers. And ultimately, when you try and screw over a media outlet by making unreasonable demands, you're not really screwing over Shane or Luke. It's the 650,000 people that read EGM that are getting dicked. Or the 3 million people that read 1UP that are getting dicked. It's like, ultimately, you don't want to look stupid by going out there and sort of adjusting what you say because of pressure. I would rather us not have the exclusive than have the reputation of being malleable to this stuff. It's like, at the end of the day, there's a period of time in which people are talking about these games, and it's usually the week that it comes out. And it's like, yeah, you'll get a blip for being first, but very often an exclusive can be a double-edged sword, because
expectations with that exclusive.
There's expectations of the exclusive. You got an exclusive. The assumption is you're going to give it a good score, right? And so you come out of the gate with the first review of Grand Theft Auto. And what do you know? It's really good. The immediate assumption is, they got an exclusive. They were being soft on it. So the only way, like when San Andreas came out on OPM, we had the print exclusive. And, obviously we thought it was great. But the backlash from readers was, well, is it really that great? You had an exclusive. I don't know if I really trust you. So the only way that exclusive would have been legit is if it wasn't very good. We were the first people to say that San Andreas sucked.
Well, and I know, people might not like hearing this, but there are times when people have exclusives and you say, well, this is the score it's going to get. And they're like, well, we don't want to have the exclusive anymore. That happens. Like, we're going to give it a 5. You no longer have that exclusive review.
So what I want to know is do gamers want to know that? Do you want to know when companies say to us, do you want to say, the listeners of the 1UP Yours show, do you want to know when they say, do this and we will do this? Do you want to know that? Because my assumption is that you do and you should. But if you don't, and you want to cling to the fantasy that's the game industry, that's fine. But I want to know.
So we argued about this afternoon.
Vigilantly.
I can guarantee you the knee-jerk reaction that everyone's going to have is, oh, yeah, we want to know about it. We want to know about it. Here's the deal. If you want to know about it, you're going to know about it, and then you're going to have all these shitty opinions of what happens to get games to you, and then you're going to go to play your game, which you want to enjoy, and instead of enjoying it, you're going to think about all this other fucking crap that happened. And you know what? None of that's material to the game. If you enjoyed San Andreas, that's great. Who gives a shit what any print mag or anybody else did to get exclusive X or exclusive Y? The bottom line is you enjoyed the game, you had a good time with it. That's what's important.
So, what you just asked them essentially was, do you want to know all this because you'll turn into Luke?
You'd be bitter and jaded.
I'm not saying you're going to turn into Luke. I'm just saying that there's a lot of this kind of crap that goes on, and what really needs to happen is for the PR companies, for the publishers, to stop running around gun shy, to stop looking at every game as, oh my God, how do we make sure that it meets some equation so that it makes some... yeah, you need to be profitable with it. I get that you need to be profitable with it, but they approach the entire thing as a mechanism, which is why the PR plan is so planned, which is why the whole development process is so planned, which is why games are stuck with focus groups that change feature sets and shove things down developers' throats like, oh, we need to change the way this works, we need to change the way this works, because the focus group said this and that, and we know if 80% of the focus group likes this, then we sell 10,000 more copies. It's bullshit. It's not the way it should be. They've got to get trusting enough to let the gaming equivalent of a Spielberg go out and make the goddamn great game and let us cover it as the great game and didn't just go forward with it like that.
And to deal with the reality that, you know what, some games that you make are a 5. Cope with it.
Some of them are 3.
Yeah, deal with it.
Yeah.
Don't make crap.
You're going to miss.
Don't peddle it.
Or you're going to miss. Sometimes you miss. You know what? That's the way it is, and that's it. So Or else you'll end up like Luke, which you'll get to hear more of when we come back here in a second. He's got a couple of news items to hit us with, don't you?
Yeah, you know.
All right, so we'll catch you guys in a minute.
Listen to EGM Live to hear Electronic Gaming Monthly editors take you beyond the pages of the magazine.
Extended impressions of the hottest games.
Shocking celebrity guest stars.
Exterminate all man-animals at will!
And the newest video game soundtracks.
That's EGM Live, available at egmlive.oneup.com or the iTunes Music Store.
Hello, and welcome to the One Up Radio Network. If you know the name of the podcast you'd like to hear, press 1 now. You have selected Radio PM, starring the editors of the official U.S. PlayStation magazine. To download an episode at radiopm.oneup.com, press 1 now. To listen to a promo, press 2 now. In a world ripped apart by war, only one magazine.
You're listening to One Up Yours, part of the One Up Radio Network.
All right, and we're back with the final segment for some news and a question of the week at the end of all that mess. But first, Luke's going to tell us how we don't even need to talk about the news everybody else is talking about because we already covered it 3 weeks ago.
I know. Like, everyone's freaking out again this week because Bloomberg wrote about the Microsoft handheld and was like, it's what JLR's working on. Like, yeah, 2 weeks ago. And then some small foreign website had a thing up about Assassin's Creed coming to PC and Xbox 360. Like, late to the party.
I heard that
Welcome to
somewhere.
May.
Yeah, like, sorry guys, late. To start off with stuff that is actually interesting, though, the DFC intelligence report came out last week, and they said for the first time we are. Oh God! They said Sony's going from first to worst now.
Can I just sit this one out?
You like it. You like it.
Analysts write lots of things.
Hey, how come we didn't bring the article about 1,200 parts in the PS3 might make it hard to manufacture?
Oh God!
Sony'd have an answer. I mean, Shane would have an answer for that.
Analysts write lots of
The quote from the quote from the analyst is, "Suffice to say, the events of the past 6 months have forced us to overhaul our models like never before. And now appears clear that this new generation of console systems is going to result in a big shakeup in the game industry power structure."
It's possible.
Didn't Sam just write about this like last week?
Yes, he did.
Essentially, I mean, we've
Basically followed the same.
This is something that one thing that's sort of starting to get on my nerves about analysts is, among other things, is that like analysts are sort of a little bit late on the uptake on a lot of this, and they're looking at it. I mean, they're looking at it all from a very business perspective, but I think that the eventually, like the next gen of analysts is us, just without the business degrees and the ugly suits.
Yeah,
And the massive impact on financial markets.
Well, the thing is, I think like 2 or 3 journalist generations from now, I think you will see that. You will see people who, when they say this,
So
they
you
will
could go work at DFC Intelligence and send out a report that says, you know what?
No, what about, check this?
Yeah, suck my dick.
Lucums.financial.oneup.com.
I mean, really, I take this with a grain of salt. At this point, nobody knows what's going to happen. I don't know. You don't know. This November, anything can happen.
But people are justifiably concerned. Justifiably. I mean, the price concerns came up again this week. This time with Ubisoft and Sega talking about being concerned with the PS3 price. And Ubisoft's big guy, Yves Guillemot, told Bloomberg in an interview that was really hard to track down on the interwebs. I had to get it through Gama Sutra because Bloomberg's like, you have to pay sometimes.
Oh, well,
And this was one of those pay-to-play subscriptions. And that
let's throw him a $5 next time.
Yeah. Could I get one of those subscriptions? He told Bloomberg that in order to compete with Microsoft's Xbox 360 in 2007, Sony would have to drop the price on its PS3 unit. Really?
So, look, is this the first real chinks in the armor of Sony? Do you think?
I don't know if it's the first damage to the armor, but it is at least somewhat concerning at at face value that these companies are calling Sony out for their price. But
particularly one that's been quite public about making Assassin's Creed exclusive, for example.
Well, they've only announced it.
Oh, they've only announced
it, John. Let's use the correct language.
Yes.
But what I talked about in the news story too was that it's important to keep in mind that these third-party developers like Ubisoft and Sega, and to not have a knee-jerk reaction to be like, is Sony damned? Because Yves Guillemot and the other guy, Scott Steinberg, who's a VP of marketing at Sega, are protecting their own hive. They're looking at their own numbers. They're looking at how they can make the most money. They're not necessarily concerned with, they're only concerned with Sony's price in terms of how it's affecting them. So you have to keep that frame of reference in mind when you're looking at stuff like this.
You didn't say it. I'll say it right now. These are the first real chinks to me in the Sony armor. I mean, this is the first time that you get someone like a DFC saying, you know what? Hold the press. We've been selling you on Sony all along to investors who, keep in mind, investors are those people that are like ignorant about the games business. So we've been telling you guys who listen to us for opinion, you know what? Now we're going to tell you, you might want to just hold your bets for a minute.
This was also, I think, what Scott was doing. The impression I got anyway was that this was setting up the following announcement, which was the launch games for PS3 that are not exclusive.
Right.
So it was Full Auto 2 and what was the other one?
Sonic
was never exclusive.
Right.
And we need to go
it's
back
like,
to this.
okay, we're a little concerned, and then the follow-up is we're doing these games as PS3 launch games. By the way, they're not exclusive.
Well,
so
that's a huge problem for Sony because, and we need to get into this topic. We won't do it on this show. We'll do it on a future show, everyone. The difficulty in porting between the two consoles because of the extreme differences in the architecture. If you're not writing an exclusive title, you're not taking advantage of the PS3, which means you're not getting any bang out of it. That's going to be a hard sell for them.
Well, we've been trying to get developers to talk about what they're leading on, and a lot of people aren't prepared to talk about it.
That was a story that I've been working on for probably a month and a half since I came back from E3, and like 3 people have talked about it, and that's not enough to do journalism.
Right, because current gen lead SKU makes a big difference.
A huge difference. One company who did talk to me about it was the guys who did Cypher. The guys who were doing Cypher, when they came by, Cypher Complex, I went down as they were leaving because I was in some other meeting when they were here and asked them what their lead was. And their lead for Cypher Complex is the PS3, and they said that they think that that'll be the trend in the industry because the PS3 is the most difficult piece of hardware to develop for. I mean, whether or not that's going to be the case, or even if Cypher Complex will be a difference maker, I mean, we obviously don't know. I wanted to talk real quick, too, about Scott Steinberg. He said first that the PS3's 2 SKU pricing is within expectations, but then he's sort of playing politics with Game Daily when he's talking to him, because he also says that whether that's after the 5th or 6th million units sold, and he's talking about Sony's pricing, that's super arguable that they're going to have to life cycle price the hardware in a way that brings it to the masses. I would think relatively soon, because it is expensive. For a lot of families, it's too expensive. So you even have Steinberg, and that's just in a matter of 2 paragraphs, backing off of, like, it's within expectations, but it's still too high. There's obviously concern there. I don't know that it's a chink in the armor as much as it's, maybe I'm giving Sony the benefit of the doubt in this case, but I think that Sega and Ubisoft in this case are protecting their own first.
What he's touching on there, though, is that by going to a more expensive price, what Sony's able to, I mean, if you've noticed with the PS2, the price drops have been few and far between and extremely gradual. I mean, slicing off $20 at a time is because they've been trying to stretch out the lifespan and they didn't have much to work with. So by launching at $600, you then have plenty of opportunities to make significant price drops that make a difference. And every time you drop by more than $50, you're arguably moving into a different group of people and how prepared they are to drop the money. So
certainly get a sales bounce.
Right. So at $600, you are chasing the hardcore. At $500, it's still pretty engaged. Once you get down into that $300-400 range, it's a little more sort of like mainstream. And then sort of by year 5, 6, 7, you're down into it being a proper mainstream device. And you've still got room in the $200 to $100 range to extend the life to 10 years, which is what they've been talking about trying to do with the platform since PS1.
How about this? If you won't buy it to chink in the Sony armor, will you at least buy this? By executing the plan that they thought out ahead of time and launching when they did, first-party games in the interim or not, Microsoft has totally achieved their goals with 360 of putting Sony on the defensive and getting the situation set up and setting the table the way they wanted to.
Yeah, while the sales numbers, I would say, don't necessarily support Microsoft having Sony on the defensive. I think conceptually and, ideologically, Microsoft definitely has Sony sort of backed into a corner. And, I mean, this fall and more so all next year, we're going to see.
Who would have guessed hearing statements like either of those statements, the DFC report or the third parties being wary of the price, about Sony even 6 months ago?
Well, but the price just makes it that way. These third parties, they want to be able to have PlayStation again, and it isn't like this. The new high price, the high risk. They aren't going to sell like millions out of the gate and have. It's not going to be PlayStation 2 right away.
There's more trepidation out there than just the pricing.
It's justifiable.
It's I mean, the being afraid of the pricing as a third party is justifiable. It is. It's not going to be PlayStation 2 again out of the bat. It's not.
Moving on, we've talked about Microsoft and Sony. How about Nintendo? There's the thing this week, and Shane wrote about it on his blog. That's egmshane.oneup.com about the
special guest
about the Nintendo Wii launching in September, and that comes from Chris Morris, who writes Game Over at Scene on Money, who's one of my favorite reads every week. And he speculates that the Wii is in final retail production. It's being produced and could conceivably ship in time for September. Nintendo today said that they're still planning a Q4 launch for the console. But Shane, that's not what you think.
Well, yeah, I was talking to a named industry insider, and his theory, which is pretty informed, is that in Japan, DS is so ubiquitous there. It is literally like controls the entire video game market. I mean, over PS2 even. Like it's huge. The last year that people want Wii so badly there that Japan could do a soft launch like late September, like 1 or 2 first-party games, and just get like mass hysteria. Because I mean, the Japanese public
1 or 2 games.
Well, they're used to
done it before.
They've done it before. Like Nintendo 64 launched with 3 games there.
Yeah, I know they've done it
all
before.
First party. And if they can just get like 100,000 units out with 2 games, Japan would go nuts. It would be like the most talked about thing. People would go crazy for it, and they wouldn't even have to do that in America because it's just like Japan is their home, and they always launch first there. I think it's possible, and the theory is they're having an event the week of Tokyo Game Show, which would be like around September 18th, 19th.
You got speculations on what the 2 games would be?
I think it'd be Wii Sports and who knows, Zelda. Who knows? Maybe Zelda doesn't.
Does Zelda count?
Yeah, none of it counts. But yeah, so at that event, they could be like, oh, here's the price, and it's cheap. It's like $200 or less. Also, it comes out Friday. That would be
right.
Because if it came out the first day of Tokyo Game Show, not only would it like destroy the world, like all of us who were there in Tokyo to cover TGS would have to go instead and go buy Wiis. They like
not it.
Yeah, but
hell, I'll be it for that, dude. I would gladly stay. That would be a memory that you would have like forever.
In one fell
first day of TGS, standing in line in Japan to get a Wii. Come on,
they would like steal Sony's thunder hardcore that way.
Steal it. There wouldn't even be any thunder. You'd be like, oh, welcome to TGS.
Like when you make jokes.
But aren't you I'm a little concerned about what would happen if Wii does become huge in Japan. If Wii like really does take off in this huge manner, like what would that mean for the difference in markets of like Europe, America, and Japan? If like our market turns out to be really different in this next generation.
You mean where does that leave your high-priced PlayStation 3 that you like so much?
You could conceivably, I think what Shane's getting at is you could see each platform dominate its own market. You could see Sony clean up in Europe, Microsoft in America.
I don't see that.
And you don't see that?
Euro Sony.
But what it will do, I think, is
like
that
Euro
Disney. The new Nintendo move towards these sort of more creative toy-like experiences that we were talking about earlier. I think they could like really sew that up, and like Sony's dabbling in it, but not really engaging in it, and Microsoft's not really acknowledging it, except these sort of vague promises that XBLA will do it.
Right.
But Nintendo's going to do these things that he's leaving the sort of narrative, sort of really deep, evocative experience and going straight into these sort of very visceral, very gamey experiences.
And by September in Japan, there will be well over 10 million DSs sold. That's 10 million potential Wii customers.
Phenomenal
and if
number.
Wii is cheap, it's an easy thing to buy. Everyone's going to want it.
So you know what? You mentioned TGS, and this has been a very hot subject on the board, so I'll just reaffirm for everybody out there in case you're wondering, yes, OneUp is going to be doing extensive coverage of TGS. We'll all be there. We'll have great coverage for you. If at all possible or whatever it takes, we'll get the podcast up on the air so you guys can hear impressions from us there. So settle down. Don't worry. I saw the thread. We got it covered for you.
Live from the Wii launch.
Oh, God.
Podcast.
Sony Bettenhausen takes a Wii.
Jesus. So to wrap things up, Nintendo, President Bush, Commander-in-Chief, had a birthday this week. He's 60. Nintendo sent him a Nintendo DS Lite, which is cool. I said Nintendo DS Lite there, Nintendo, because I haven't got mine yet. And I'm figuring that I'm saying your product name, and you'll be sending me one, too. That's Luke Smith, 8th floor.
Have you seen John's black one?
Yeah, it's awesome.
He also has a white one, right?
I have a white one.
Yeah.
Too,
Why don't you give Luke your extra one?
Maybe.
I don't think so. That's okay. I'm waiting for the super awesome colors coming this holiday. And so President Bush got brain training from Nintendo in a very Reggie move, I think. And Nintendo said this to them. They sent President Bush a letter. It's obvious you don't have a lot of time to play games, which makes brain training such a great activity for you. Just a few minutes a day with more than 15 daily training tests will help keep your mind sharp. He's there. President Bush is a dull mind.
And on that note, so we did actually plan Question of the Week this week, which I thought was a pretty good idea. John looks at me and says, we did?
I don't remember what it is. Did you write it down?
Didn't I ask you already?
I hope you wrote it down.
I didn't write it down. Did you write it down?
No, I thought I asked it already.
I don't
earlier. About...
That was more of a yes or no question.
Oh, yeah, I don't remember what it was. Skip?
I didn't think...
The producer crumbles. He's like, oh, snap.
We were patting ourselves on the back in the break as to how organized we were this week.
I was kind of assuming you guys came up with this at lunch because we didn't come up with this yesterday.
No, we came up with it during our little meeting.
No, we didn't.
No, we did.
We did?
Yeah, you know what? Actually, we talked about it and said that it would come out of the second segment.
We were like, this was an awesome
action plan. Like, it'd be nice if we had that.
All right, so you know what? We'll just go back to the second segment since that was a very spirited discussion. We got into the whole discussion about PR versus what we're able to bring to you. So what do you want out of Luke, who's our main PR dog? What do you want him out there bringing to you? What do you want him digging into as far as the news?
That's fine. Your wish is my command.
Guide the Luke. He's like a pit bull at your command.
I think of it like a bounty hunter. Like,
do you find that more glamorous?
Yeah, I do. Like the One Up Network's Boba Fett.
I think he's more like the Mace Griffin.
I think you're more of a consumer advocate, consumer watchdog.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that.
I like that.
I like that a lot. We should talk about that later.
Junkyard dog.
Advocate.com.
Registering. Get.
And I guess also finally at the end, we also talked about wanting to build our audience. I have a post up on the website on our boards right now about getting the audience built, and that's important to us because we have a lot of plans. We're having a meeting now every week where we talk about what we want to do with the show. A lot of that involves getting people on the show from whether they be industry executives or developers or other folks who are bloggers. And when we go to those people, especially their damn PR contacts, who are ultimately the interface people we have to get with. First thing they ask us is, how many people are you talking to?
Anything that he's about to do, you just undid.
It's pretty much the way it works. So,
you know what? The day I have to fire you is going to be quite sad.
It's be a damn shame.
I've got a job already.
Brian at Kotaku said he'd hire you back, right?
Yep.
You're safe for now.
Wow. So there you go. That's really the basis for why we're out there looking for to improve our audience. That and the fact that, hey, you know what? The more people we have on your boards, the more people we have there talking about the stuff, the better the discussion gets. And that's not going to, for the foreseeable amount of future, for the amount of people that you guys can bring into listening to this show and talking with us on the boards, that's not going to get a runaway from us. Luke and I are going to be there. You see us on the message boards every week, so don't sweat it. We're definitely going to be there. We'll even drag Skip on the board sometime too. Let you hit up the man behind the earpieces. Yep. All right, so until next week, come see us at boards.oneup.com, and we'll catch you next week.
You're not joking about the firing thing, right?
This has been One Up Yours, a production of the Ziff Davis Game Group and part of the One Up Radio Network. One Up Yours is hosted by Garnet Lee and John Davison, produced by Andrew Pfister and Mike Ng, and is published every Friday afternoon at podcasts.oneup.com and at the iTunes Music Store.
What's up? I'm not in the fucking credits?